All right. Just make sure this is all working correctly. Great. It seems like everything's coming through. All right. So last time we had met, we had put in a novelty reward, the penalty here for being stuck at a place, and then adding the novelty reward directly to, if we go here, novelty, adding it directly to the exploration reward. Basically, what was happening is that the AI was learning how to min-max the rewards from the novelty, which was happening because basically this would accumulate really quickly while there was a specific window for this. So after the 500 steps, it would no longer get the penalty. And this was assuming that the AI would frequently move every so often to a new location. And what it figured out is it would move a step, wait 500 to 600 while accruing the stuck penalty, and then move a square, which would then, or 499 basically, right before that grace period window would end, and move one step. And so it was moving slowly, one step, basically every training window to proceed through. So it was no longer fighting battles, really, if it could avoid it. So what you see here is that it did very little of the actual events over the course of 30 million steps. And most of that was maximizing this exploration reward. So before, exploration would be on a given run to Brock about 200 to 300 points. Whereas here, it was maximizing that novelty reward to gain a significant advantage. And you can see here, it did do some battles outside of pallet, died, and went back essentially to go ahead and do that reward. It was barely doing anything as far as healing goes. And overall, just not performing as well as we would like. So I need to go back and figure out this. You can see here too, like it stopped really trying to capture Pokemon, capturing only one or two, not doing anything additional with it, not even getting to the point where it would revive a Pokemon. This one I've done by far the most battling in the 20 agents that were going. So you can imagine each one had about 15 million, or sorry, I had about 20 agents going, about 1.5 million steps for each one to try and learn. And then it overall just was not performing great. And we can kind of scroll through here until I eventually stopped it. But just in general, its largest focus was trying to figure out how can I maximize those exploration rewards and do very little. And you can see here, the stuck reward or stuck penalty reward, however you want to look at it, it received that 52,000 times because I have this being reduced by the exploration, or you can see here, it accrues 0.01 to begin with. And then it's getting the exploration weighting as well, which I think is 0.05. So it's already like 1,000th of what it should be in terms of the actual number here. So if you want to think about that, that means like 5,000 times, if it's 1,000th, it'll receive the stuck penalty. Whereas the exploration reward is just so high that it's worth it to take those penalty points up until, because there's such a large grace period for when it's receiving those. So it can go either end of things. And what a couple I figured out is if I just stand there after I've received that 500 point penalty, then I move one time, I now suddenly accumulate a huge factor in terms of the novelty. So I need to go back and change that. And that's kind of the purpose of today's stream. So there's not a lot to actually update in terms of the overall run progression because it's not even making it to Viridian. I shouldn't say that. It's not even making it through Viridian Forest to get to Pallet Town. So it hasn't even attempted a gym leader battle. The just the point bonus for the novelty is just far too high. So it would get a new point for getting into the coordinates, but then it would not do much else. So I need to figure out how to counteract this. Like I said, I thought this would be a case where, oh, if it's just the last step that I had seen a new value, then we should take advantage of that. So I think an easier way to do this instead of calculating it is, last seen step equals self.step count. And then I can take this, and now it's self.last seen step. And I need to put this in here, so I'm going to go search out the novelty reward, and I'm just going to make here self.last seen step equals, and I can set that to 0. Doesn't matter. It's going to quickly get updated. The first time it makes any move, it will go and make this. So now, instead of having to calculate the max over and over, this should give us some processing efficiencies, but we need to check on how we're actually doing, or how this will accumulate. So if we're on step 2 and it sees a location, then the last seen step. I probably want to handle it this way. Oof. I want to set a min of this last seen step, or step count minus last seen step, and the window. So this would prevent it from accumulating a large multiple here, because at most it's going to get 500 times the 0.001, right? So then you're what, 0.005 in terms of the reward from YouTube. So you're the one. So you're the one. Jenny, it's an app where you don't gotta watch chat. It'll pop up like notifications. Sure, it's a good idea. Hi, Digital. Yeah, sorry. When I, yeah, when I, because I have the chat on one screen and then I have the Visual Studio Code over here on another. So it's something I need to get better at, is just checking the chats. Although usually there are not that many people here, actually checking on the chats. There's usually not much here. What I've noticed too is streaming in the evenings does not get much in terms of overall viewership. So I put this on Twitch and YouTube. YouTube will keep serving the videos up afterwards as a YouTube video. So yeah, that's why you see them here on YouTube as well. So I do stream to both, but YouTube has basically a catalog of all the things. Chatty will take care of that for you. Okay. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. It also depends on what I'm using to stream. For these ones, I should pull Chatty into it. I also have the other one where the AI agents are running on their own, and I use OBS for that stream. I don't use it for these because I try and keep the videos logged automatically. No, I mean, I appreciate the feedback on what to do, because it is something that I think will be better for the live viewers. And I went with this one because it at least lets me pop up what people are asking, so that way it would appear on the video later, so it doesn't just look like I got distracted or off on a tangent talking to somebody, where I can at least pop these up to show. I know there are like overlays that can do it as well, but I have not really figured those out yet well enough. Can you give me a rundown of the work process? I just walked into something about location. Yeah, I mean, I just started a few moments ago. We were, the last video that I had done, we had tried to put in a reward for finding new steps if it hasn't found one in a while. But we also put in a penalty to penalize it for not moving out of a location that it had been to recently. This helped it to get started at the beginning of a run, to get out of like Professor Oak's lab and then get out exploring, which it worked pretty well. But I thought, oh, if I can do a novelty reward for it to find absolutely new locations, yes, this is a PPO model that this is built off of. And I can show that it's here, right here. So this here just checks to see if we already have a zip from a steps file that we had created in the training process. And you can load those in here. But otherwise, it's just doing PPO. And we're just passing it the parameters for the old file to keep incorporating for our new run. Just recognize that interface from my projects. Gotcha. Yeah. So I tried to encourage the agent to move quickly to new locations. But what it started to do is the novelty reward was too large. So it started trying to min-max that. So I let this run basically overnight to try and see. It got about 30 million steps in, and it wasn't even into Viridian Forest. So it was trying to maximize this. Well, ML reinforcement learning Python plus Pokemon. Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting for the same thing. Like my full-time job is a senior principal data scientist. And then what was a fun way to cross over like games and everything? And that's reinforcement learning. That was when I had done my master's program, the area that had interested me the most was trying to find out ways that I could improve upon this. And then a few months ago, I had seen a YouTube video that talked about them using reinforcement learning for Pokémon Red. And I was like, oh, well, I remember growing up playing that game, so I'm going to try and improve upon it. And it's more challenging than you would think, because Pokemon does not have individual levels along the way. So it has to train and figure out balancing exploration with raising the Pokemon, the puzzles that you're going to encounter along the way, right? How do you teach an AI how to learn cut and what those little bushes are that could actually be cut? Like we're not using computer vision in these cases. So how do we kind of work around those? And I haven't even gotten to the cut problem yet in terms of what we're going to be doing. I'm just trying to get it to even get to bill. The most I had gotten to was I had luckily gotten a few agents to beat Cerulean Gym, but then I couldn't replicate it again, which was its own own bit of frustration. Needing to fly to get to the end of their island. Yeah, same thing with Surf. They're all going to be different challenges for it. And then there's like a time frame window as well on this, where if you imagine, like, it's not doing 32 million steps all in a row. It resets in the version that I have. It resets at about 200,000 steps. So it has 200,000 moves to try and get as far as it can before it will reset and try and relearn the process. And so you kind of have to take this bit by bit, chunk by chunk. I would extend this longer if it had started to progress more, but it really hasn't. And once it figures out, like I had a version before with Squirtle as a starter, that was the one that had gotten Misty, and it had started to figure out how to get to and beat Brock within about 12,000 steps for the agent in the worst case scenario, but then was losing so much in Mount Moon because you have encounters every step of the way, or possibly every step of the way there, that it ended up deciding, I don't want to do Mount Moon because I'm going to die and I'm no longer going to get the exploration reward as frequently as I did before. So I'm not going to do that. And that was where I decided, well, maybe the issue is that you're going to end up knowing so much. I mean, it's not necessarily the knowledge of Pokemon. It's how they created Pokemon and stored its data that is the most useful thing. So one of the things that I had implemented was giving the agent essentially infinite money by Every 50 steps, it checks to see if they have more than 10,000 gold. If not, just add 10,000 to their thing. So that way it can hopefully learn using items and their importance. So I had to learn how to manipulate the memory values for those. And then the same thing for Mount Moon, where I had actually put in something here where you can specify the locations to disable the wild encounters. And how I'm doing that is a memory manipulation in the Pokemon Red ROM. So for these areas, I'm setting the encounter rate to 0 to try and hope that it will get through the areas. But for a lot of people who work on these projects, you'll hear them refer to it as cave fear, because the caves are always on encounters. It's not like you're walking in the grass and you encounter a Pokemon. So there's like no path you could work around. This is purely, it does not want to go in those areas, even if it has to, because it's going to keep encountering trainer battles and wild Pokemon battles. And you run out of moves along the way. So, you fight a couple wild encounters at first, but then your Pokemon ended up weakened, and then you can't beat the trainer fights that you have to do to get through there, and it gets far too challenging for it. It's like it freaks it out. Yeah, because it doesn't want... It stops receiving the rewards as frequently as it did the first time through. So it thinks, oh, I don't need to go there anymore. And then also, you get set back to a location, and it doesn't understand that in terms of where it is on the map, right? It's not like our understanding of, oh, we went to an area and we got knocked out. Maybe I should approach that fight differently. Or maybe I wasn't ready for that area yet. All this is learning is that I shouldn't have gone that way. What do I need to do now? And it's like when it tries to get to Mount Moon, that's the only way to proceed forward in the game. It tries to go backwards and figure things out, but there's no way for it. Like you go back to Pallet Town, you're not getting any reward there. You go over to the Victory Road area while you're stopped from going into Victory Road until you have the Cerulean badge. So then there's nothing for it to do except try and proceed through Mount Moon. So it tries that for a while up until, so those are the, right, everything's dead-ended. But then I'm going to hit this point in the middle of the game where it kind of opens up a bit, where once you get through Cerulean, you don't have to go to Vermilion right away, although it's like the best thing you should do, right? The map kind of opens up a bit. You can go to Celadon if you wanted to, or you can go through the underground path to get to Vermilion. And then there's the you can't access the bicycle path, but it's like there's enough grass there that you can fight things and a bunch of trainers again. Then if you don't do the Vermilion gym because you haven't figured out cut yet, it's going to go to the Diglett cave. And then it's going to try and go through there, but it's going to run into, if it gets the lucky encounter of fighting that high level Doug trio, it just gets sent back. And so it's like, I don't want to go that way either. Well, what am I going to do? Kind of wander around a while. So there are a series of different ways where it can almost learn the wrong behavior because it's not really learning in the traditional sense, right? There are so many different signs along the way, or people that your NPCs that you talk to that kind of teach you little things about the game, but the AI is not learning the same way that we learn. And so that is one of the challenges here. And then it's such a long window, right? If you think about Mario, every stage is self-contained, right? And it's pretty easy to figure out what you did wrong in Mario, right? You fell into the pit, you die. You run into the Goomba, you die, right? You jump and you hit a brick and all of a sudden you get a mushroom. Oh, you can take 2 hits now instead of 1, but you still fall in the pit and die, right? Where it learns that same stage over and over and over again. But for Pokemon, it's such a open-ended game in comparison, even where we just said like, oh, there's pretty simple dead ends, that it becomes really challenging for it to learn like what is the right behavior to do. And that's one of the things that the reward functions that I'm putting in are trying to help it to understand. I'm trying to make it know that exploration is important and provide it ways to get those rewards over and over again. So I had started putting in this stuck penalty for penalizing it for not moving, and then the novelty reward for finding a new location every so often. You want to do a project like this, but for old school RuneScape. Oh my goodness, that would be quite the undertaking. I mean, I used to play old school RuneScape back in the day. If you could figure out the problem is to start a project, get halfway, and then start another project. Yeah, and that's a bigger problem too with reinforcement learning. In general, is once you set up this initial part, and then you need to let it run for a while. And once you, like I gave it, I started this at like 9 p.m. last night and let it run basically all through my workday just to get results here, which are disappointing. It's not instantaneous feedback. So you can't keep working on it, and then you stop because you're tired or burnt out a bit on it. This has a whole nother problem of you can start on a project, but then you need to wait days for your actual feedback and then figure out what you want to do. Yeah, wanted is the keyword there. Can't you make it run? Yes, you could run multiple. So I have 20 agents that run when I don't have this on the stream, or 24. So you can run multiple simulations at once. It'll have 24 agents trying to figure out the same problems, which does speed up the process. But there are limitations with what you want to do in terms of compute. There's a reason why this is like, yes, LSTM models, very, very much similar, right? All the reinforcement learnings have kind of the same issue, is you need to give it enough data, enough iterations to do it. For whatever each one would take 7 minutes. Yes. You have to think about just the time for each run to get to the, that was the project from the double hockey stick. Gotcha. Yeah, you have to think about the time it's going to take for each stage or iteration to play out. And that's one of the challenges here with Pokemon, is that you don't necessarily fail by doing nothing. There is no timer on making you complete a stage like there would be in Mario, right? Like a theoretical, because the agent will not get penalized for not doing anything. That's why I put in the stuck penalty. Otherwise, what it had learned is that once I stopped getting exploration, it would go back and it would like fight battles to increase the leveling reward that we have here, even if the reward was very, very small. So you'd see it with like at one point I had Blastoise regularly in Mount Moon because it was just trying to get the level rewards rather than actually trying to get through Mount Moon. And then when I switched it to Bulbasaur, what it actually started doing was it started to manipulate the heal reward here because of Leech Seed. So what it would do is it would go into Meridian Forest from Pewter and fight like a Weevil or what was the other one? Caterpie. And basically it would use Leech Seed a couple times and then it would just use Growl over and over again. Because as a tactic to become strong as possible. Well, you have to be able to evaluate what is strong. Right. And that's not what you actually need to defeat the game. Right. Because the goal here is to obtain all the badges and get through Victory Road. But what ends up happening is all the agent knows is to try and manipulate the reward function to get as high a score as possible. Right. So part of that here to encourage that is these badge rewards. So I have it right now. It gets 200 points for getting a badge, but it hasn't figured out where to get the badges from yet in the most recent ones. Yeah. Yeah. So it would get 200 additional points for badges. But what I did when I put in this novelty reward was, well, I actually gave them a ton of extra points here in the exploration reward. Yeah. So, and that's because all these tie together, right? And that's why we're monitoring what these scores are. So when I first started out, I wanted to give it points for seeing and capturing Pokemon. Seeing can be a proxy for encountering more and more trainers, because you can't capture all the Pokemon in the original version, but I think you can encounter every single Pokemon across the game. And then the same thing for capturing a Pokemon. We wanted it to learn that capturing is important, especially in the early game, so it has more than just the starter Pokemon. So I have this at 6 times the number of Pokemon that it's captured. It will get starter points for having the starter. So it starts at 6. The next Pokemon that it captures goes to 12, and the next one would be 18, right? And then when it evolves, it also gets an increase there as well. So you're rewarding it for actually doing the evolution process instead of canceling it out. Same thing here for the scene rewards. You progress through because when you're at Brock's gym, you're going to encounter a bunch of new Pokemon. You can't capture them, but you can at least see them. And then you also get the event rewards here, which are for things like all the trainer battles that happen. Getting certain HMs or TMs. Getting the badges is also an event, but then adding an additional reward for this badge. That these all are interconnected with one another. It's just how to balance these appropriate to get the behavior that you want. And then, like I said, you have to let it train for hours just to get a process or get an idea of what's going on. And I'm running these from my laptop here, which it does have a GPU. It's just about 5-6 years old. You could do this, and people have done this, where they use like an AWS trial account and put it there and then run through the credits that you get for those. But I think you have those for 30 days. And if it's going to take a day or two to go through a run, and you don't have things already figured out pretty well, you're just going to be kind of wasting that money out there. And I had put this on my laptop just because I thought it should be able to handle the training. I can do that, and I can't do the training and the videos where I have the AI training at the same time, because you just don't get enough progress. There's only, when I had the stream up, there's only 4 agents that are running, and they move slower because it needs to display or render the video for each of those. So it's like a trade-off of, do I want to actually show the AI making its progress, or do I want to have the learning process going on? And that becomes the balance here. So I've given serious consideration to getting like an actual desktop computer to run the training on, and then have the laptop here streaming it going through the agent's learning, just to try and speed up this process, because it does take a while to really get any feasible results. I had been having luck because I'd been updating or during these update streams like every 2 days, 2 or 3 days. So I could let the agents run all the way through until the next stream started. And we were getting pretty decent rewards, but it was doing 50 million steps, so we would expect progress. But then Mount Moon had basically just capped us out. So it's kind of like a trade-off between all these of, do I want to be streaming more frequently, or do I want to be making more training time available for the agents? So what I had originally planned after the last video was to have this stream to be talking about a few changes and then bring up the agents going again. But I'm going to have to let this go like offline, and then probably tomorrow I'll do the same thing. I'll try and bring the agents to run through the weekend to see what they're learning and what their progression is. So our goal here today is to figure out what adjustments to make to this, and then give it some time for it to learn. So what I'm thinking here is that it's going to take the minimum of this step count minus the last time it had seen a location, or the window. So that way it's always stuck in this stuck penalty reward, and not accumulating a very large novelty reward, even if it takes the penalty along the way. So I think that's fine. The reason for the 50-step grace period here is because if it moves onto a step and encounters a trainer battle, the hope is that it gets through the trainer before those 50 steps start. When I hadn't had this, basically what it would do is it would try and defeat a Pokemon in one move. If it didn't, it would run away. And so that was causing it to only learn to run from battles instead of trying to get more out of the leveling reward. So I did decrease this stuck penalty, but it tries to avoid any negative reward at all. And then work on the novelty reward side of things here. So I'm going to try this in the next agent series. Sorry, series of agents learning. I will let that run tonight. It'll probably run for about 24 hours. I'll have my stream tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We're going to meet up with another person on Twitch where he had checked in with me when he'd first found out about this project. We're going to talk about progress that I've made from, I think it's about 2 or 3 months since I checked in with him, and then what others are doing in the space. And then I had also recently wrapped up the NFL Big Data Bowl. So I'll talk a little bit about my findings there. The submission that I had put in to there, it says there are 7,000 entrants. I have no idea how many actual submissions for that project because they're using a Google form for it. It's not your typical Kaggle competition. And hopefully we can get selected for, I entered in the metric track on that one. So just trying to build a model to predict run versus pass. If you want, my videos are on YouTube on that where I do the live stream talking about what we're finding along the way. And then, like I said, tomorrow thanks. Tomorrow I will be starting on a new project after I have the discussion with Mike, where what I'm going to be doing is trying to go through and I'm not going to say use an LLM, use machine learning to look at how people are generating content on a platform like YouTube or Instagram or TikTok and see if we can use an LLM to recreate the steps that they're taking in those videos or see if there are any commonalities across those things. So I like the idea of using Instagram or TikTok because they have the hashtags, which should make it a little bit easier. For Google or for YouTube, you're going to have to learn the Google API and then search through that way. So I'll be doing a little bit of research on that tonight to try and put together the video series, and then we'll go live tomorrow afternoon to poke through it and see how we did the evaluation. I had started, and this kind of related because I had done a while back using a local LLM to evaluate YouTube videos and pull out a transcript of the video, put that in an LLM to get the most important factors or things on the video so that you don't have to watch the full YouTube video to get the content from it. And you could run everything, it was in a Colab notebook, so you could run everything locally. It didn't use any of the LLMs that you had to pay for. It's essentially using things like BERT for summarization. And so it allows you to, with no real cost to you, get summaries of YouTube videos to see if it's worth your while to watch. They were for example, my wife she watches these 20 to 30 minute videos that are supposed to explain a topic. But a lot of times they'll get off track or it won't actually be the information that they're learning or that she wants to learn about. It'll be they just use the keywords to try and get higher search rankings. So it's going to be kind of a continuation on that series. Oh, that sounds like me and Bert, and if I'm feeling special, I might do Mistral through Olama. Yeah, so I actually have a video on how you could use Olama to embed that in your VS Code here. So do I have it? I don't know if I have it enabled right now. It was the extension. Yeah. So if you use Continue, you can use Olama locally with whatever models you pull down there. So let me just enable this and I'll show it. Should be here. No, wrong thing. Sidebar. So whatever models you download on Ollama, you can run them all locally, even in VS Code. So when I enable this, that's why I had it disabled. But if I were to type, it would say like Control and Enter for it to read this line and try and understand what it was doing, and you can ask it questions. So like using CodeGemma, what else? Cold Llamas here. They're about the same, honestly. StarCoder, it's just I had downloaded basically a bunch of models to show there. But I put together, I think it was like a 30, 40-minute video, how to run these locally on your computer. See, my problem is I use AI for everything, and it's just getting easier and easier. I'm never going to be able to learn anything. But the nice thing is that this also helps you to break down barriers where you don't need to learn anything in its entirety to do something. It's like for me personally, I come from a database background. So like nowadays it would be called like a data engineer, but like I used to be a data analyst and then was doing like database administration for a small company. Then I moved into consulting. And one of the hardest challenges for me getting into data science was I always felt like I needed to know Python inside and out. I needed to know the algorithms to pass the interview tests. And if I wasn't able to do that, I almost felt like a failure. Whereas now I can ask AI and it can give me 90% of what I need. And then I can figure out that last 10% to get there going. Whereas before, like I wouldn't, honestly, if it wasn't for like AI or generative AI, I would not be doing the streaming. Because I can use ChatGPT to bounce questions off of it, to work on ideas where I don't need another person who already knows something in that area. I'm starting to convert to a mindset where concepts and testing are becoming more important than specifics. Yes, being able to understand the topic, you don't need to have a large level of depth to get started, which eliminates a lot of the barriers from beginning a lot of projects for me, where I always felt like I had to be the expert to really make progress and would it be useful. And what I found from doing these YouTube videos and streaming is that there's a lot of people that are in these same spots where I can go through it and I can teach others how to do it myself. And I'm reducing the time it takes for me to get through it. And then I can talk through the technical aspects of what's happening. When I had first started this project, it would have been overwhelming to start with this code base that I had pulled from somebody else's GitHub to do it. But I understood, like I worked on it piece by piece. I started by figuring out what are the specific things that I want to change in this project to, in my mind, improve it. And then I started giving code snippets to ChatGPT to ask it, can you explain this? Like, what is this doing? And it's become a really, I would say, a really helpful tool for me to become a force multiplier. Same thing for the Kaggle competition. I understand football. I used to work at Amazon on their Prime Video metrics team. So I was literally at the intersection of sports and data, and this competition came along, and I was still using ChatGPT to ask questions on the coding side because I knew from the sports aspect what I wanted, but I could not quickly figure out how to do that. And so it's eliminating a lot of the time where I would be spinning my wheels or I'd be fighting error and syntax messages rather than it actually being able to do something. So I think I'd spent 20 to 30 hours on the Big Data Bowl. Like I streamed everything except for the final day where I had a long running experiment. I'd streamed what I was doing for that experiment. And then unfortunately it crashed out. So the last day I had to quickly kind of put together the experience. If that's the case, then I may be further than I thought. I would say this, if you are feeling like imposter syndrome or it's not enough, this is most likely going to be true for anyone in these cases. I, for the longest time, had always put the restrictions on myself in terms of what I could do with my coding experience, with my own experience. Like I've now been working in data science for, what is it, almost 14 years. But I always felt like coding was such a stopper for me that I could not feel comfortable in those roles. I could not feel comfortable putting this in front of other people. But now that the LLM tools have come along, and I'm starting to feel more comfortable using them to essentially shore up my own weaknesses, to feel comfortable to put myself in front of others in the case of streaming and talking about the projects that I want to work on. Right? So I may not get the syntax right every time, and I used to feel terrible when I was doing that. But now it's like, oops, that happened. I'm going to keep going. But I would kind of always put myself down because I didn't get it right. And I always felt a lot of pressure in interviews that I had to get syntax completely right. And what I had figured out was I don't need to focus on the syntax as much as I need to focus on the explanation of what I'm going to attempt to do in those interviews. So I know I got kind of sidetracked here, but when I was interviewing for the longest time, I always felt like I put so much pressure on getting the syntax completely right and making sure I had all the ways to implement the algorithms correct, that on the interviews, I wouldn't actually be talking to the other person that was on the interview with me, trying to explain what it is I'm going to do, when their purpose for the interview with me is to try to understand the mindset that I have in approach to the problem. So then I was only giving them the coding side, and I was doing a poor job at it. But when I started performing better on the interviews, it was because I was spending more time talking to the other person, making sure that I understood the problem, talk about a way to brute force get the solution. That's not always the most efficient way, but at least you're going to get an answer, and then talk through with them the ways that you would then improve it. Because a lot of times, if you can get to the brute force solution, once you look at it, you can understand what you need to do. Oh, try to remove for loops as much as possible, right? Try and reduce the number of memory reads that you're doing along the way, or the things that you're storing in terms of your variables. That it became such an improvement in the positions that I was interviewing for, and getting an improvement for myself in terms of feeling comfortable with coding more and more. Because a lot of times when you see YouTube videos or even class videos, it's like they're following along with a script because they've already done the work. But your brain isn't always interpreting that. You're just seeing that they get it perfectly right when they're entering it into the system. But they've literally cut all the best parts to put into the video and left everything else out, all the mistakes. They've gone back and they've done it multiple times, right? And it's also not their first time trying to approach that problem. They've got it to a point where they feel comfortable sharing it with others. And that was part of like the mindset shift, and it only comes with time and practice and repetition to get there where you start to feel more comfortable with what it is you're doing. So digital for you, I would say, like, if you just start putting your code up on GitHub, even if it's just for you to track things on what you're doing, that starts to get you into the mindset of sharing out what you're doing more and more, right? And then become involved, get whatever project you're really interested in, try and find the community around that project. Like this Pokemon project has a really good community around it. That's my plan. I'm trying to full green board today. Awesome. And I hope you actually go through and complete that, right? Even if it doesn't turn out like, even if you don't get the green board every day this year, right? Give yourself credit and grace the whole way through for doing it, because you meant it to be a challenge, right? And life's going to happen along the way, or you're going to have something that's more interesting. on the given day and it just slips your mind, or like I said, you're visiting family or whatever it is, that at least you set the goal and you're going to commit to it, but don't put yourself down when you don't get like to your goal that day. And also don't let one day of missing it, let's say you miss a day here in March for whatever reason, don't let that stop you from trying to get back on track with that plan. Because every day that you're actually out there making the changes and committing to it is a day that you're improving, right? And it's okay to have days where you're not committing your code because something happened, or you had a more interesting day in your life, or something bad happened and knocked you off track. Just get back to it. And you know what? I'll check in with you here on your progress too. If you want to just hop in, say, leave a chat message. Hey, I did this today that I found interesting, and we can take a look at it. Or if you want me to go through what it is that you're doing to provide feedback, or even just say, hey, like, this is a neat idea, I'd be happy to do that, because these are all things that people had done for me that I found interesting or found very helpful. And I think that would be, useful to keep passing on, because that's the only way we're going to kind of grow a community of people that are still learning, right? Not everyone's an expert. You don't need to be an expert in everything. And then coming back and looping in, the LLM tools or the coding tools, they're there because they're there to help you. And try and remove the barriers that either are in your way because of a lack of knowledge, or a lack of understanding, right? And that's the great thing about what the LLMs are really enabling for people like me, and it seems like for yourself as well. Well, thanks, Mr. Joe the AI guy. I'll definitely pop in from time to time. Yeah, and I appreciate you even just popping in today, right? Like I said, it's not often I have people that pop into the streams, but I enjoy chatting with people, trying to help encourage people to learn and grow, because I think it's on all of us to keep learning and growing. These tools are going to keep coming out and providing new ways for people to explore their interests. So with that, we've made the changes that I wanted to change here by just putting this in. Well, I followed. I like having moments like this. Yeah, and I think this is a good area to do it. Twitch definitely has. If it were more people, I wouldn't have said much. Yeah, I mean, every interaction helps, right? And what I'm hoping is that you're gonna lurk and work. Well, I'm actually gonna be bringing the stream down in a few moments, but what I'm hoping is that people, because like I said, I put this up on YouTube as well, people find this later and find it inspirational, that two people here can have a conversation about what they're learning, what they're working on, and also find interest that they're doing, even if it's not directly related. Sorry, no, you didn't distract me at all. The changes that we're going to make were very small. In terms of the change, I think this is a simple way to implement what I wanted to do. I didn't want to make too many changes, because it's making too many changes would make it hard to track what actually had worked successfully and what didn't. So I was interested in what you had to say. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind at all taking time to talk to people who want to learn, right? Part of my work even is trying to find people who are interested in learning more about AI, even though they don't necessarily have a data science or master's degree. Someone told me commits are supposed to be sentences, not paragraphs. Meanwhile, my commits are novels. I think, honestly, commits are what you want them to be, especially on personal projects. If you're in an environment where you are working with other people, depending on how much your code is changing, like, I want to know more as I'm evaluating them. So if I see a commit from one of my people that they have like 3 new files and I don't know 5,000 lines of code. I would much rather them have a longer one. And yeah, I'm not confident enough to work with other people yet. I don't want to mess things up. But that's the thing about creating your own fork on a GitHub is you now have your own version of their code. So you can make whatever changes you want and keep working in your own branch or fork of the code. That won't push other people through or won't push to the work that other people are doing. Right? Like even this, I forked that Peter Whitten had done the original YouTube video of this. I forked his repository and started making my own changes. Right? I'm pushing my changes to my branch in the GitHub, but it's not pushing to what he's doing in his original branch. And he's still making changes to his code today. But this allows me to come in, tinker with it, see if I can find anything. That's the great thing about open source, is I can tinker with it. If I find something, I can push that to him. Right? If I don't find anything, then it's not going to change anything that he's doing. And I would encourage you to think about it the same way. You've been reverse engineering pretty much? Yeah, that's a lot of times in, like when you're doing the open source projects, you kind of have to reverse engineer at the beginning to understand what it is that they were intending to do. But your projects are small. That's fine. The video where the series that I had done on doing the YouTube video summarizer, that's a small project. It's not large scale. I think when I simplified it down, it's like 200 lines of code. But when I had first started, it was very, very large because I was going through step by step by step. And making those changes, like I'm pretty sure I have that out here on my GitHub as well for the work. Or no, I think I was just sharing the collab notebook for that. And that's fine too, because every time you're doing something, you're making progress. Even if that progress is that you figured out what not to do, right? What is it? Edison said, I didn't fail to make a light bulb 1,000 times. I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And it's a very small but very key difference. I appreciate that because every little bit helps. It's not like I'm making money from YouTube videos. Honestly, I'm doing it because I find it interesting on building out these projects. And then doing this in public I'm hoping allows other people to do the same thing. And that's kind of the community that I'm looking to find and engage with, rather than being focused on like building, the most popular YouTube videos. I'd rather it be a situation where people are interested in this case, Pokemon, right? Come to the stream because they thought it was interesting for what's going to be done. And hopefully we can engage in conversation like this and work on the project as well. Right. That's the most important thing, is doing the thing, whatever that is. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be for fame. Yeah. I think if you're trying to do this for fame, especially in like the coding or learning space, it wouldn't be sincere. And it wouldn't, I think that matters more to people overall than, because this doesn't necessarily lead to the most engaging thing for people in terms of learning. I want it to be engaging, but I don't want to also be the most popular YouTuber in terms of education, right? Would it be nice to be the biggest YouTuber in reinforcement learning? Sure, but that's because my interest is in the reinforcement learning, not necessarily on YouTube. I'm sure there are tons of things that I could do with my YouTube videos or streams that would be better for people, and I'll figure those out along the way. But the most important for me is actually doing the right thing. Right, a small group of 10 would be cool. You'd be surprised. I was honestly surprised. I had good in terms of the holidays, I gained, I think it was about 10 people on YouTube, which was really nice. It honestly was really nice to see and reinvigorated me to continue working on this in the new year. Get started with your workflow. No problem. Thank you for coming. I'm actually going to be bringing the stream down as well. I'm going to go spend some time with my kids. And then I'll let the agents run and learn, and we'll come back tomorrow to see how they're progressing. So, Digital, I hope you have a great day. I hope you do get to the whole year of commits. But if you don't, try and get as many as you can. And for the rest of you who find this video later, thank you for coming and watching. And we'll see you next time. All right, have a good one. I'll be here tomorrow. All right, see you, dude.